Hello and good evening and welcome to Prog Monster, a site dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So my name is Murph, I am the host of the show. Today I'm going kind of Christmas tree with my green hat and kind of orangey shirt here. So today I'm going to be doing a double look back album, although I'm not going to do them both on the same video. I am doing two today by two bands that I think had some competition with each other. Both came out of the same kind of place in history and both had huge impacts on rock music in general. The albums aren't from the same era. One's from the 60s, one's from the 70s. But both bands, I think, have had an impact on my music and my music liking as well. So today we're going to talk first about the first one by arguably the most influential rock band that has ever played rock music, and that of course is the Beatles, and this is their Rubber Soul album from 1965. Okay, so the stats about this album are pretty clear. Released December 3rd, 1965 by EMI, and at EMI Studio was where it was recorded. It's about 34 to 35 minutes in length, on Polyphone in the UK and Capitol Records in the United States. Produced by George Martin. Okay, and appearing on this album, of course, are the Fab Four. John Lennon playing guitars, singing, and organ on Think of Yourself, For Yourself, sorry. And he also plays some tambourine on this album. Paul McCartney doing vocals, bass, guitars, piano, and some maracas on certain parts of the album as well. George Harrison, this guy right, where is he? There he is in the corner there. This guy here, George Harrison, right, trying to keep the shine off. Doing vocals, playing guitars. He plays sitar on Norwegian Wood, and maracas and tambourine also on the album. And then, of course, the last guy, Ringo Starr, right here, right between George and Paul. He does vocals on one song, drums, percussion, and then Hammond organ on I'm Looking Through You. So they all played quite a bit on the album. It's an album that kind of comes right at the end of their kind of pop era, we'll call it. The era up until 65, 66, where they were releasing a lot of radio-friendly pop songs, and nobody released as many as they did. Dominated the charts pretty much. And then they got into doing drugs and experimenting with music, and that started on this album. Began to start on this album, the drug experimentation and different stuff that they wanted to try. So I'm just going to go over some of the tracks on the album, and before I do that, I'll show you a little bit of the booklet that I got with it. So it comes with this book. Rubber Soul is the name of the album. There's four of them on the front. Then you have another picture of the four of them lying down with their heads together, and the list of the tracks on the album. And there's a little bit of a history of the album and how it came about. And there's John Lennon. Another picture of Paul McCartney and some more of the history. Then the entire band on stage. And there's George Harrison with the hat and some more of the history. And then finally ending off with Ringo Starr and the end of the history of the album, and some more pictures of them. So the pictures are kind of dated. This album came out in the mid-60s. A great album. I don't know if it's my favorite Beatles album, but it's right there. It's arguably between this and Abbey Road. This one here began their move towards more, I would say, psychedelic music, a little bit of progginess there too. Definitely more experimental in their music here, and as they were in the drugs as well. Anyways, they wanted to do something different. They just didn't want to just be considered a pop band. They wanted to have more of a different legacy. This is what the album looks like on Parlophone. That's what it was on originally. It's before the Apple label. Okay, so the tracks on this album include, I'm going to fold it up so I can look at it better. So there's like 14 tracks on this album. There's Drive My Car. It's a pretty poppy but fairly heavy driving song. A song I like quite a bit. Norwegian Wood is kind of a folky, poppy song. There's a little bit of dabbing into the folk area. The sitar was played on this song as well, as you heard earlier by George Harrison. You Won't See Me, that's not a bad song. It's not one of their more well-known songs, but I guess for a Beatles song, it's a deep track. Nowhere Man is one of my favorite Beatles songs. Really puts this album on the map for me. Think for Yourself, good track, another deep track. The Word, not a bad song. Michelle, of course, great song. What Goes On, another track. I think this might be, but I don't see it anywhere. I think this could be the track that that Ringo Starr. I think this is the track that Ringo Starr sings on, but I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I am. Sorry, it doesn't want to stay down now because it's just sitting inside the sleeve. A Girl, I really like this song quite a bit. It's poppy, but you can already see they've started to change a little bit with this music. I'm Looking Through You, another really good track. In My Life, just fantastic song. Wait, good track. If I Need Someone, that's a little less known track, but not a bad track. And Run for Your Life, which is, I believe, let me see, I made a note of it somewhere. No, sorry, I got the wrong track. It was Think of Yourself. That's the one that Ringo Starr plays the Hammond organ on, and I think John Lennon also plays the Hammond organ on that. So there you have it. This is an album well worth having. To me, this is the beginning of really solid albums by the Beatles. I mean, the stuff they did before were, to me, more like collections of hits that they had. Because they would just put out hit after hit after hit. So after they get so many of them, they would just put it on an album. And they did that with a couple of albums. They also put out a couple of soundtrack albums with a lot of these hits too, which were included, and so they put them on two different albums. One was A Hard Day's Night, the other was Help. But again, they just had so many hits, unlike any other band in history had the kind of hits they had. So they didn't want to just keep putting out hits, so they started putting them on albums. And they were one of the first bands to do this, because in that day and age, people just put out hits. That's what they did. They put out singles all the time. Albums didn't start coming into play until these guys came along and started putting out albums. And they put out, so the first real album in their repertoire for me was probably this one, Rubber Soul. And then Revolver came next, and then Sgt. Pepper's, and then Let It Be, and Abbey Road, and so on and so on. But this was the beginning of it, and it's a really cool cover. I kind of like it quite a bit, and it really is the beginning of the Beatles' inventive period of time, and also an influence a lot of bands, launching the prog movement, launching album movement, just had such a huge influence on bands in general. You can say what you want about the Beatles. Some people nowadays don't think, well, what's so special about that? But they were the only ones doing this. The only ones. They were the forerunners, the front runners to all this stuff that came about. If not for them, none of this other stuff that you love and listen to would have existed. So they began it, and other bands picked it up and started moving with it. And a lot of my favorite bands also did that. Now, a lot of my favorite bands aren't really directly connected to the Beatles in the sense that they take direct influence from the Beatles, but the Beatles influenced the bands that they listened to, which then had influence on them. And to me, you can't acknowledge bands and the type of music you like without crediting the Beatles with having an impact on that. So there you go. So there you go. Rubber Soul by the Beatles. Fantastic album. So coming up will be the second part of this two-parter. I've done one of these before. I just lumped these two albums together because I happen to like both bands. The other band is kind of their rival, part of the British invasion of from Britain to the United States. And the other band is, of course, the Rolling Stones, and I'm going to do their video next. So I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, like it, and if you want me to do more Beatles stuff or get more in depth with some of their albums, please just subscribe, and I'm glad to do that. Anyways, this is Prog Monster signing off, and you have a good evening. Bye.